Well, just before we came on air, I spoke to the Guardian columnist who helped publish the leaked documents. I asked Glenn Greenwald if the story had given rise to the kind of debate he'd hoped for.
You've seen over the past 7 to 10 days more open debate about surveillance policy in the United States than we've had in the last 12 years since the so-called war on terror began. You have members of Congress who feel betrayed by things that have been said to them that turned out not to be true. You have other members of Congress proposing laws that would restrict or limit what the NSA can do and how it spies on people, or offer more oversight and limits on the things they can do. So I think that certainly the kinds of debates that we hope to trigger are starting to emerge.
I want to ask you about an opinion poll that was released today that shows in the last month or so President Obama's likability rating, trustworthiness, has dipped sharply, and particularly, it seems, among younger people. And I'm wondering whether you have a view on whether this whole business of listening into calls or collecting metadata or the internet resonates more with younger people than it does with perhaps older people.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, and I think the answer is absolutely. I mean, younger people grew up with the internet as their primary culture and means of communication, and to learn that the U.S. government is attempting to invade those communications on an indiscriminate mass basis, or has done so to a large extent, I think is very disturbing and alarming. I also think it's disturbing to have learned that the U.S. government is collecting everybody's phone records and learning who it is they called, by whom they were called. It's really the revelations that depict a picture of the United States government engaged in massive surveillance, including on the internet, which is supposed to be a place where we could behave in an unobstructed and free way and do so with anonymity. And I think you're right that younger people particularly value the internet for the promise that it brings and are disturbed by these revelations more than anybody.
The U.S. intelligence agencies would argue that they checked the metadata of only 300 telephone accounts in 2012. And I have a question in relation to Edward Snowden. He says he was disappointed by the Obama. There are young people who seem to be disappointed by the Obama campaign of 2008, promising more transparency. And I'm wondering just how much of this is political as well as about freedom as such.
I don't think it's political. I asked him the question, when did you start thinking for the first time about leaking information? And he said that it was when he was stationed at the CIA in Geneva, Switzerland from 2007 to 2009, and he started seeing things that disillusioned him greatly about what his country is doing in the world, what his government is like. And he said the reason he didn't at the time was because he thought that Obama's election would usher in a variety of reforms. So it was only once he saw that it didn't that he did this.
Right, okay, but I mean, I've read some of those transcripts too, and some of it doesn't seem what one might expect out of the ordinary in a sort of typical post or indeed a Cold War scenario. I suppose my final question to you is, where is this going in terms of revelations? Can we expect more?
Yeah, there are definitely a lot more revelations to come. There's going to be a lot more transparency brought to the NSA and what they're doing both in the United States and around the world.
You believe that this is really going to change how America and other countries behave?
Of course. I mean, why would I not believe that? We see all kinds of examples of populations around the world changing how their governments behave. That's what journalism is about, is informing people so that they can make decisions to pressure their government to do things differently.